Hello everyone. Hello, Instagram Live, Champagne Billecart-Salmon. Hello, Champagne Billecart-Salmon for the launch of the Cuvée Rendez-vous number 3, numéro 3. Hello everyone. Welcome. Good to see you all. I'm just going to wait a minute or so for people to join, for the numbers to stabilize, and then we'll get started. If you're here for the explanation around the new Cuvée limited edition Rendez-vous Billecart-Salmon number 3, then in your right place. Bonjour everybody. Bonjour. Good to see you all. Hello. Hello everyone. Thank you. Merci. Thank you everyone. Good to see you all. Rendez-vous number 3, Champagne Billecart-Salmon, le numéro 3, comme on dit. Welcome. Okay. Before I start telling you a lot more about this new baby, this new Rendezvous number 3, hello Luca, I just want to tell you a little bit about, or remind everybody about the concept of Rendezvous, because I had a lot of questions about what it was. I think some of you may be familiar, some of you may not. So before I tell you more about this particular cuvée, let's talk. Let's talk for a second about Rendezvous. Now, the birth of the cuvée Rendezvous. Oh, sorry. Before I get to that, for those of you that don't know me, I'm Mathieu Billecart, and I'm the 7th generation of the Billecart family to have the privilege to lead Champagne Billecart-Salmon. An important detail. So Rendezvous as a concept. Rendezvous are at the very start experiments. They were not meant to be shared with you and people that love our champagne. They were just experiments for her to understand a little more how particular terroir, particular grape variety, particular vinification technique would age. This is a series of experiments we started with the harvest 2014. And it really took until 2020 for the tasting committee to decide that we wanted to share with you some of these experiments, largely because they had an amazing taste. That's the main point. And I just simply didn't want to bring them back into the reserve wine catalog, because I think they all have quite a distinct identity. And therefore, I think it's always interesting to share it with you. These are, by their very nature, very small bottlings. They're limited edition bottlings. And more importantly, perhaps, they are bottlings that we can never repeat. So they're just done as one-offs and then they disappear. So the concept of Rendezvous is this. This is a temporary cuvée. And therefore, when number 1 is finished, we don't have any more. Number 2, and we're now number 3. So this is for the concept of Rendezvous. Now, let me tell you a little bit more about the Rendezvous number 3. I got a lot of emails, thank you all, because everybody thought this would be 100% Chardonnay. To be fair, it would have made a lot of sense, since the Rendezvous number 1 was 100% Meunier, the Rendezvous number 2 was 100% Pinot Noir. Quite frankly, it would have made a lot of sense for it to be 100% Chardonnay. Now, let's start with that. Why is it not 100% Chardonnay? As it happens, we have actually experimented and have done some of these small bottlings with Chardonnay. However, wine has a mind of its own. And at Billecart, we're convinced that we shouldn't try and dictate wine what its cycle should be. So upon tasting the various small bottlings that we could have used for a Rendezvous, it turned out that the Chardonnays were just not ready. They were not in a phase where we believed it deserved a Billecart signature, in the sense that it was not in a drinking window which we felt happy with. However, we were very fortunate that we had this other bottling, the 100% Meunier, which was very different, was certainly in a phase which we felt was complete, and it had done its time in our cellar and therefore was ready to be shared. At Billecart, you know that we don't get guided by what marketing should do or would do. Yes, it would have made sense for it to be Meunier, Pinot Noir and Chardonnay. However, that's not how a wine and how our cellar works. We don't dictate that, we just respect the maturity of each of the individual bottlings. Ergo, Rendez-vous number 3 is 100% Meunier. Okay? Where it is a little different is this is 100% Meunier, however the terroirs are different to number 1. The dominant terroir in this one is Leuvrigny. Leuvrigny is a little village in the left bank of Vallée de Marne that we really love at Billecart because it produces some of the finest and more refined Meunier in Vallée de Marne, which suits particularly our style at Billecart-Salmon. So this is the main village in this blend. And then there are 2 other villages that you may be more familiar with, which are Damery and Venteuil. But Leuvrigny is the dominant village in that blend. So 100% Meunier, Leuvrigny, and a few others, but Leuvrigny is the main one. As I mentioned earlier, this is a base of the 2015 vintage. Okay, 2015 vintage, for those of you that don't know, 15 is quite a rich and concentrated harvest in Champagne, or rich and concentrated wine rather. So expect a more powerful style, despite the style of the house being finesse and elegance. 2015 is a concentrated year. It is a non-vintage, and to try and balance out the power of 15, we have blended it with reserve wines from 2013. 2013 is the polar opposite of 2015. It was quite late harvest, one of the latest August harvests we had, which was quite a cold harvest, produced more mineral, fresher, more acidic wines. And therefore we found balance by putting some of the 2013 reserve with the 2015. However, 70% of that bottling is from 2015 and only 30% is 2013. So 100% Meunier, Leuvrigny, 15 base. That's what you should remember. In terms of vinification technique, we are on 100% stainless steel fermented in this one. Again, remember the genesis of this. These were experiments. Stainless steel enable us to preserve the fruit and preserve the freshness and the true identity of a terroir. And at this time, we really wanted to get that real impression, so we've gone 100% stainless steel on this occasion. 100% fermented in cold fermentation, Billecart-Salmon style, which is at the heart of all the cuvées we make. So we ferment around 13 degrees Celsius. This is actually what's happening at the moment. For a slow process to preserve the fruit, to preserve acidity, and to keep freshness in the wine for longer, which is particularly important in this style of our house. Okay, so 100% cold fermented. For the technician amongst you, and I saw a few, so the malolactic fermentation is a partial one. As often at Billecart, we decide each tanks individually. So to be really specific, the 2015 base, so the 70%, was malolactic blocked. Why malolactic blocked? I remember 2015, quite a rich and concentrated year. We were trying to preserve acidity and tension. However, in 2013, we made the malolactic. So it's a partial malolactic, but if you want to be very precise, 70% of which was blocked, 30% was made, again, linked to a particular identity of a particular year. That's how we work at Billecart, tank by tank, terroir by terroir, parcel by parcel. That's what we like to do, work with precision. Okay? Another very important point, aging. This was bottled in 2016, disgorged in November 2021. To be accurate, that spent 64 months on lees, okay? So horizontally in our cellar. This is an awful long time for the vast majority of non-vintages. So over 5 years on lees, and then almost an extra year on liquor, right? Disgorged November, we're now end of September. Okay, so 10 months on liquor. So we have done the work for the proper aging of this bottling on lees and post-disgorgement. There is no expectations. Once you can age it, it's certainly got into a drinking window where we are comfortable for people to enjoy it. However, we will have different taste and different expression of that taste, and some of you may like your wines a little bit more evolved, some of them prefer more freshness, but fundamentally, an awful lot of time has already gone into magnifying this terroir and this vinification technique. Okay? So, a summary of that tech sheet, 100% Meunier. Leuvrigny is the name of the village you should remember. 2015 base, cold fermented, stainless steel, 5 years on lease. That's for the technical element. Okay? Make sense? Should we get to the more practical, enjoyable bit of tasting? Since you're not saying no, I take that as a yes. Wonderful. So, first, color. Now, it's always a little hard to tell on Instagram, but believe me when I say this is a more deeper color, a deeper yellow. Okay, this is not the light yellow color. This is gold, so sort of golden. Okay, richer. Black grape variety, more time aging on lees, gives that concentration, and the year itself, I guess, was more concentrated. Okay, so deeper color than what you're used to, certainly for a non-vintage. More, I would say, a vintage color. Okay, I'll answer that in a minute. In terms of nose, I'm on sort of white fruit as well as citrus. Again, particularity of the vinification style. I also have some red currant and licorine, okay, or licorice. This is there is a spicy note to this. Interestingly, whilst now I've told you it is a 15 deep, rich. However, 15 vinified by Billecart always gives that more tension. So for me, it's less the identity of that vintage, bearing in mind this is a non-vintage, it's the identity of this terroir and the Billecart vinification technique that I guess you get more on the nose. Okay? In the mouthfeel, you get that expression of the year. So this is rounder, richer, and more concentrated. And this is the identity of the year. You get the red currant back, you get some of the sort of nutty taste. You get some of the spices. I don't get so much of the licorice in there, but I get some very light spices like cumin. So it's not a sort of burning hot type of spices, but very light spices that you get in here. So sort of more North African style. And whilst you do get that expression and concentration, what's quite interesting for me, and I think you've heard me say that time and time again, the hardest thing to achieve in a wine is balance. And that wine has that balance that despite its fruit, its concentration, it has a very nice saline and fresh finish. And that's what we pride ourselves at Billecart, is this aspect of create finesse, elegance, and balance. Now, that's the house's DNA. That's what we're trying to express itself. However, obviously it expresses itself differently in a rich and concentrated year, depending on the grape varietal. Okay? But certainly, for those of you that followed the Rendez-vous series of number 1 and number 2 that were based on the Harvest 2014, these were more refined, lighter, that would play the more precision card. This is more forthright. You get the expression of the wine a lot more straight away. Okay, and again, we can't and we don't want to rebuild the year. That's how the year expresses itself. That's how the grape varietal expresses itself in this particular village, despite it being one of the lighter style of Meunier or more refined style of Meunier, and we just let it happen. And this is a great glass of wine. Okay, this is for the techie bit. Now you've sent me a lot of questions, like lots, which is great. So thank you all. I tried to group them as much as I possibly could. All the techie questions and all the questions about Chardonnay and other grape varietal, I think I have answered. So yes, there may be a Chardonnay one day, but it's not today. There were some also interesting guesses as to grape varietal we were using, but certainly for today, we are on this 100% Meunier, base 15, Leuvrigny, 5 years in the bottle. Okay, so this is the topic of the day. Now there were some other questions about compare and contrast with Rendez-vous number 1 and Rendez-vous number 2. Well, there's not much compare and contrast to do with Rendez-vous number 2 in the sense that it was a different grape varietal. However, for those of you that love Rendez-vous number 1, well, you're not going to be disappointed. We are in a similar sort of style, similar grape varietal. However, I would say it resembles more Rendez-vous number 1 as it is 2 years later than it started, in that it is a bit more richer, that certainly you would have experienced right from the get-go with Rendez-vous number 1. We can't and we don't want to redo the year. That's just the expression of that particular year. I think it's a great enjoyment as it is, but that's the beauty of working with vintages wines or non-vintage wines that have very strong dominant years, is fundamentally they express themselves differently, and that's just the way nature wants it. So a Rendez-vous number 1++ and more expressive. That's probably the best summary I can give you. But if you love those Meunier wines, then certainly this is one for you. Then there was questions about aging potential. I have to admit, we have learned an awful lot from Rendez-vous number 1, which is aging even more gracefully than would have ever anticipated. So certainly, we definitely going to get into a stage where 10 years was a minimum, but now when I retaste Rendez-vous number 1, every time I think of it, I'm thinking it's probably possibly later than initially anticipated. So yes, you can age it if you so wish, but to be honest with you, I would certainly, if you get the chance to get 2 or more, try 1 now before just saying this is one for cellaring. For me, this is one for, you can have a great time tasting it today. Now, obviously, we all have different tastes and we all have different style that we wish to have in terms of oxidation and richness and aging, etc. But with 5 years on lees and an additional year on liquor, certainly there is no expectation. It's ready to go for its particular style. Yes, it will grow, whether you like that growth or not. Obviously, you'll have to judge it for yourself. Okay? Then I had questions about food and wine pairing. I think Meunier always have that reputation of more humble beginnings. I don't think that's necessarily a fair assessment, but I think certainly in food, I am not going to be the advocate of the most refined dishes on this one, although I'm sure some great chefs will come up with it. So for me, it's a cheese board, a charcuterie board. We have this thing called pâté croûte in French, which will work brilliantly with it. Certainly we had it at the harvest. It'll go very well with the poultry. I'm thinking of it, I'm perceiving it more as a sort of a meat as opposed to sort of oyster seafood type of wine. That's not to say it won't go with it, but that's certainly how I feel it. Just the richness of the terroir and the style of the terroir, I think, will suit better that kind of dishes. But finger food, aperitifs, and just frankly, if you like the wine, you like the food, very rarely do you get it wrong with the pairing. So instead of getting your mind twisted on it, just open it, try it, and I think, again, you'll find your own style. It is designed to go with food, but it's also designed to go without food. So it's not a must. It's not a must-have in this style. Again, with the freshness and the fruitiness that we've tried to preserve. Right, this was some of the main questions in regard to the particular cuvée. Then I saw some of them you were asking in terms of, is it the premise of a bigger bottling? If it's a premise, then it's not something we've started working on straight away. As I said, these were experiments. Never say never. This is one of the grape varietals that we get surprised the most with, and our house has been one of the strong defender of, because our Brut Reserve gets 40% or close to 40% in its blend of Meunier, so we've never considered it to be any less than the other, but certainly this is the one that with higher maturity we learn more and more different facets of its expression. Okay. Then I saw some questions about availability and where and when. Now, I must have had 20 questions about this and countless number of countries as to where we're trying to answer. So for more specific questions, please ask the official account and they'll try and answer. What I do know is, because there are questions about US, UK, Japan, Finland, and I think I missed a few. So UK, it's already in stock at places like Hedonism Wines, Cambridge Wine Merchants, House of Townsend, and some of the other restaurants. In the US, Japan, Finland were the other more frequently asked. We ship those bottles, the allocations in July. So on best estimates, it should land anytime now or beginning of October to November. But I think some of you will know that, frankly, travel time these days is a little bit harder to predict. But in Europe, I think beginning of October, it should be plenty of time. US, Japan, I reckon later part of October and November. I said it at the beginning, these are extremely small bottlings. I think you will know the retailers that have Billecart in stock and have been where we've been working together for a while, and therefore these are the most likely people to receive the allocation. Don't expect 12s and big packs. It's not the way it is. There's just not enough of them. However, if you want to secure 1, 2, 3, 4, then I would put your name on the list with these particular retailers, and that should happen reasonably quickly, pretty much in all our key markets. I hope that answers most of the questions, and as I said, I can't be much more precise than that, so ask the official account and we'll do our best to direct you as to where you can find it. But with enough conviction, I tend to find that most people find our champagne. Even if it's not quite enough for everybody's desire, we do our utmost. Right, well, these were the main questions I had. I don't know whether there's any more. Just as a reminder, rendezvous number 3, 100% Meunier. Leuvrigny is the main terroir you should remember, alongside Damery and Venteuil. 2015 base, 5 years in the bottle, 64 months on lees, with, as ever, the Billecart cold fermentation. I hope I answered most of your questions. I hope you had a good time. I certainly was very happy to see you all again, even if it's virtually. And I hope to see you soon, either at the estate or somewhere in the field. Thank you all for joining, and hopefully see you soon. Bye-bye.